Hello there, my name is Payal Naraine and welcome to this video series. यहाँ हम कवर कर रहे हैं पूनम दलाल दहिया की एंशिएंट एंड मेडिवल इंडिया की थर्ड एडिशन, जो कि लेटेस्ट एडिशन है। इस किताब को हम थ्रूली रीड करेंगे और जहाँ ज़रूरत पड़ेगी वहाँ हम साथ ही साथ यूपीएससी एंड स्टेट सर्विसेज में आए हुए प्रीवियस ईयर के क्वेश्चंस भी डिस्कस करेंगे। एंड इस सीरीज़ में वीडियोस लगभग 30 to 35 मिनट्स के होंगे, बड़े इफेक्टिव होंगे और हम ऑलमोस्ट 40 to 45 लेक्चर्स में ये पूरी किताब कवर करेंगे। और अगर आपने ये सीरीज़ 3 to 4 टाइम्स देख ली तो बिल्कुल ये किताब आपके दिमाग में छप जाएगी एंड ट्रस्ट मी, आपकी एक्यूरेसी भी काफ़ी इंक्रीज़ हो जाएगी। साथ ही साथ आपका रिवीजन भी काफ़ी आसान हो जाएगा। सो अगर आपको रिवीजन के साथ साथ वैल्यू एडिशन भी करना है तो ये सीरीज़ पूरी फॉलो करें। आपको बस आपके पास ये किताब रखकर मुझे सुनना है एंड मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट पॉइंट्स मार्क करने हैं। So without any further delay, let's get started. हेलो देयर, वेलकम बैक टू द चैनल घटना सूत्र। यहाँ हम कवर कर रहे हैं पूनम दलाल दहिया की एंशिएंट एंड मिडिवल इंडिया थर्ड एडिशन, जो कि लेटेस्ट एडिशन है। और हमने लास्ट वीडियो में कवर कर लिया था वत्सा गुल्मा ब्रांच। नाउ वी आर गोइंग टू स्टार्ट विद द वेरियस फैसेट्स ऑफ लाइफ अंडर द गुप्तास एंड द वकाटकास administrative organization. The king was the focus of administration, and the Gupta king adopted pompous titles like Parmeshwara, Maharajadhiraj, Parmabhattaraka, and Parmadevata, the foremost worshipper of gods, and Parmabhagavata, foremost worshipper of Vasudeva Krishna. The Gupta king also tried to exalt their status by comparing them with gods. The Allahabad Prashasti thus which describes Samudragupta as a god dwelling on earth, equal to the gods Dhanada, Kuber, Varuna, god of waters, Indra, and Antaka, Yama, who had no antagonists of equal power in the world. Unlike the Mauryan period, where the political authority was concerned in the hands of the king, the Gupta administration was decentralized in nature and contained many feudatories, like local kings and small chiefs, who ruled over the large part of the empire. These lesser rulers adorned their names with the title like Raja and Maharaja. The kingship was normally hereditary, but there was an absence of practice of primogeniture, that is, throne always going to the eldest son. The Gupta bureaucracy was less elaborated as compared to that of the Mauryas. The most important officers under the Guptas were called as Kumar Amtyas, with an office of their own called the Adhikarana. They were appointed by the king and were possibly paid in cash. All the important functionaries like the mantris and the senapatis were recruited from the cadre. Administrative posts were not hereditary, but often several officers were combined in the hands of the same person. For instance, Hirasena, the composer of Allahabad pillar inscription of Samudragupta, was Mahadandanayaka, chief judicial officer, as well as Mahasandhi Vigharika, minister of war and peace, also son of Mahadandanayaka Dhruva Bhuti. Similarly, in the Vakatakas empire, both father Hastibhoja and his son Vaharadeva served as ministers under Devasena and Harisena respectively. The hereditary nature of the post naturally weakened the royal control over the administration. The Gupta Empire was divided into provinces known as Desha, Rashtra, and Bhuktis, and the head were called Uparika. Sometimes crown princes were also made the viceroy of the provinces. The Uparika was appointed directly by the king, and he had the authority to appoint the head of the district administration and district town boards. The provinces were further divided into a number of districts called Pradesha and Vaishyas, which were places under the charge of Vaishyapati. In eastern India, the Vaishyas were divided into Vishtis, which were further divided into villages. The village headman, called Gramadhyaksha or Gramika, looked after the affairs of the village with the help of village elders. The position of village headmen, strengthened during Gupta time, had no land transaction could be effected without his consent. In the case of Vakatakas, less information is available about the administrative structure. However, it was very similar to the Gupta. The empire was divided into the provinces called Rashtra and Rajyas, which were administered by governors known as Rajadhikritas. The provinces were further divided into Vaishyas, which were again divided into Arhas and Bhogas Bhukatis. An officer called Sarvadhyaksha presumably appointed and directed subordinate officers known as Kulaputras.
Empire division structure. Bhukti, province. Uparika, viceroy. Vaishyas, district. Vaishyapati. Vithis, sub-district. Grama, village, Gramika. The urban administration included the additional features of organized professional bodies. For instance, the Damodarpur copperplate inscription of the reign Kumar Gupta indicates that the district of Kotivarsha, northern Bengal, the Uparika was assisted in his administrative duties by the corporate council, including prominent members of the town, and Adhisthana Adhikarana, a board of 5 members. These members were the Uparikas, the Nagara Shrestins, chief merchants, Sartavaha, chief Karwan traders, Prathama Kulika, chief artisan or merchants, and Prathama Kayastha, chief in charge of revenue collection. The judicial system was far more developed under the Gupta rulers than in the earlier times. For the first time, civil and criminal laws were clearly demarcated. Theft and adultery were subjected to treated under the criminal law. Disputes regarding various types of property formed the body of civil laws. Elaborated laws were laid down about inheritance. However, like earlier period, laws were based on Varna hierarchy. The supreme judicial power rested with the king, and he tried cases with the help of Brahmana priests. There was an office of Mahanandadayaka, who probably functioned as a chief justice. Uparikas or Vaishyapatis in their respective territories jurisdiction dispense the judicial functions. Interestingly, the guilds of the merchants and artisans were governed by their own laws and enjoyed certain immunities. They could punish their members who violate the laws and customs of the guilds. However, capital punishment was not at all given, as reported by Fahim. Judicial structure. Mahadandanayaka, Chief Justice, Uparikas, provinces, and Vaishyapati at a district level. The numerical strength of Gupta army is not known, but it is accepted that the emperor had a standing army which must have been supplemented by the feudatories' forces in time of need. The military organization was feudal in charge. Surprisingly, the standard terms of Senapati is not found in Gupta inscription, though it is mentioned in some Vakatakas epigraphs. The commander-in-chief of the army is known as Mahabaladharikrita. Horse chariot recedes into background and cavalry came into the forefront in this period. There is a mention of Bhattaswapti, commander of infantry and cavalry. In case of Vakatakas, Chartas denoted irregular troops and Bhatas refers to the regular troops who were not only responsible for maintaining law and order but also extracted revenue due to the state. Key terms and meaning. Maha Pratihara, chief of palace guard. Pratihara, one who regulated ceremonies and granted the necessary permit for the admission of the royal presence. Khadyatapika, superintendent of royal kitchen. Dutakas, spies. Danda Pashikas, district level police officers. Vinaya Shishtapaka, one who maintained moral and social discipline. Ashtapatta Adhikarta, keeper of royal record. Pusta Palas, record keeper of land transfers. Sholikas, collector of Shulka and Kila, untilled land. Aprata, cultivable wasteland. Aprada, unsettled land. Vastu, habited land. Pataka, land measures equivalent to 60 to 80 acres. Modakas, modern laddus which were prized sweet of the Guptas. Panchayatan, a style of temple construction. The economy. But before we do that, like triple star mark this क्योंकि इसके ऊपर BPSC में 1995 में सवाल आया था, MPPCS में 2014 में and UPSC में 2019 and 2020 में, छत्तीसगढ़ PCS में 2008 में. So it makes an important topic. So triple star mark this topics in your books too. The Gupta period was characterized by element of continuity and charge in economic life. It witnessed an increasing in land taxes but decrease in trade and commerce taxes, such as shulka or tolls. The period from 4th century to 8th century was a period of agricultural expansion due to the practice of granting land to Brahmanas, Brahmadeyas, Agraharas or Shashnas and to some other officers, vast area of virgin land were brought under cultivation, and major improvements were made in the existing methods of production, such as iron ploughshare, irrigation, and preservation of cattle wealth to attain high yield. The inscription refers to the variety of land type including cultivable land, kshetras, uncultivable land, kila, forest land or jungle, aparata, and grazing land, gopata, sara, and habitat land, vasti, which term like kulya vapa, 12 to 16 acres, drona vapa, 1.5 to 2 acres, and adhyavapa, 3.5 to half acres, were related to land measurements. The king collected tax varied from 1/4 to 1/6 of the produce. Two new agriculture tax that appeared in the Gupta inscription were uparikara, probably the tax imposed on temporary tenants, and udranga. Its exact nature is not clear, but might be water tax or sort of polis tax. There is also mention of vata bhuta tax, which probably refers to the cess for the maintenance of rites performed for the winds and spirit, and hilaraka kara, probably plug tax. In addition to these taxes, peasants were also subjected to vishti, forced labor, for serving the royal army and officials. Villagers were obliged to provide the royal officials on tour with food grains, items of daily maintenance such as grass for animals, hides for seeds, charcoal for cooking, etc. Since most of the administration was managed by the feudatories and beneficiaries, so unlike the Mauryan, the Guptas did not regulate economic activities on a big scale. Vakataka inscription mentions kilpta, a purchase tax or sale tax, upakilpta, additional minor tax. The Gupta and the post-Gupta period witnessed a comparative decline in the country's trade and commerce till 550 CE. India continued to have some trade with the Eastern Roman Empire, to which it exported silk and spice. And यहाँ पे भी like triple star mark this because ये UPPCS में 1992 के ऊपर इसके ऊपर सवाल आया था. As you can see, we have highlighted dinara and the gold coins. तो ऐसे terms को आप याद रखिएगा and highlight this in your books too. ये UPSC में 1996 में पूछा गया था and UPRO/ORO में 2017 में इसके ऊपर सवाल पूछा गया था इस certain topic के ऊपर, right? So star mark this, triple star mark this in your books too. Around the 6th century CE, the Romans learned the art of rearing silkworms, and which adversely affected Indian export foreign trade. The Mandsaur inscription is testament to the fact that the guilds of silk weaver left their original homes at Lata in western Gujarat and migrated to Mandsaur. They gave up the original occupation and took to other profession. The disruption of the northwestern trade route by the Huns was another factor of this decline. India tried to make up for the loss by carrying on the trades with Southeast Asian countries, but it did not help revival the economic substantially. During the Gupta period, the North Indian trade and the Southeast Asia was handled by the port of the East Coast, Tamra-Lipti, Ghantashala and Kudru, while those of the West Coast, Bharuch, Chaul, Kalyan and Cambay, traded with the Mediterranean and the West Asia, but the more southerly of the ports were outside Gupta's control. The loss of trade lessened the inflow of gold and silver into the country. It is confirmed by the general scarcity of gold coins after the Guptas. In the ancient India, Guptas issued a large number of gold coins called dinaras, though the gold content is not pure as question 1. Excuse me. However, the gold coins of each successive Gupta ruler after Chandragupta II contained less gold and more alloy. After the conquest of western steppe of Gujarat, they issued a large number of silver coins, rupayakas, mainly for local exchange, and a very few copper coins. There is a frequent mention of artisans, merchants, and guilds in different inscription and seal of both Guptas and Vakatakas, which point towards thriving urban craft and trade. There is also mention of flourishing conditions and philanthropic activities of guilds. For instance, the Indore plate of the Vakataka king Parvasena mentioned a Vanijaka merchant named Chandra who brought half of the village that was gifted by the king to the Brahmanas. Other inscriptions mention the construction of temples, shelter homes, assembly houses, and gardens by merchants. In fact, they also took an active part in town administration during the Gupta period. The same is affirmed even by Chinese traveller Fahin, who informed us that Magadha was full of cities and its rich people believed in benevolence and righteousness and supported charitable offering. Society. The structure of society underwent change in the Gupta period. The Brahmana supremacy not only continued but rather increased in Gupta times, as evident from the large number of land grants to the Brahmana, not only from the rulers, Brahmadeya, but from a certain categories of other people too. In return of this favor and support, Brahmana presented the Gupta king as possessing attribute of gods and tried to legitimize the position of Guptas. The Guptas were originally Vaishyas, came to be looked upon as Kshatriyas by Brahmanas. Since the Brahmadeya land was given along with the administrative rights and tax exemption, it resulted in the creation of new class of Brahman landlords. The caste proliferated into number of subcastes in which period due to the primary two reasons. Assimilation of large number of foreigners. A large number of foreigners had been assimilated into Indian society and each foreigner was assigned a subcaste. For instance, the various foreign ruling families of pre-Gupta period of Greek and Scythian origins were given semi-Kshatriya status. Similarly, the Huns who invaded India during the early 5th century were also assimilated in Indian society as one of the 36 Rajput clans. Absorption of tribal communities into Brahmanical society, which is the extension of Brahmanical culture in distant and different areas. A large number of tribal communities were assimilated into Brahmanical social structure of the Varna system. It is rather interesting to note that while the foreigners and tribal heads were included in Kshatriyas, the ordinary tribals were given the status of Shudras. The social and economic status of Shudra improved during this period. They were now allowed to listen to the Ramayana, the Mahabharata and the Puranas. They could also perform some domestic rituals that were earlier prohibited for them and could not even worship a new god called Krishna. From the 7th century onwards, they were generally represented as agriculturists. Now a distinction was made between Shudras and untouchables, the latter being treated lower in status than the Shudras. The practice of untouchability intensified, especially hatred for Chandalas. The Chinese traveler Fahin mentioned in his memoir that the Chandalas lived outside the villages and had to maintain distance from the upper caste. The Chandalas suffered such a glaring lack of privilege that whenever they entered towns or marketplace, they would strike a piece of wood to announce their arrival so that the other might not touch them and get polluted. In South India, the notion of untouchability seemed to have arrived in the late Sangam age. For instance, in the famous text of Achra Kovai, water touched by a pulia, untouchable, is seen as unfit for consumption by higher caste people, and even glancing at pulia polluted the upper caste people. The status of women deteriorated further in the Gupta period. The main reason for the subordination of women was their complete dependence on the men for their livelihood. It is rather ironical that the women from the two lower varna were free to earn their livelihood, which probably gave them some freedom, but the women from the two upper varnas were even denied this liberty too. Similarly, widow remarriage was not allowed for the member of higher order, but the Shudra could practice both levirate or nagoya or widow remarriage. However, they had full right on their Sridharna, the present received by the bride at the time of her marriage, both from her parents' side and also from her parents-in-law. A lawyer of the 6th century, Katyana, held that a woman could sell and mortgage her immovable property along with her Sridhan, which clearly implies that the women received shares in the landed property, but in a particular setup they were not allowed to inherit landed property. Women thus effectively lacked property rights. The lack of property rights further resulted in their subordination and complete dependence on men for their livelihood. The free representation of females in art suggested that there was no parda system in the society. However, the first evidence of sati, immolation of widow around 510 CE, is found in an inscription of urn in Madhya Pradesh. In the Harsha Charitra of Banabhatta, the queen performed sati on the death of her husband, King Prabhakar Vardhana. Dharma Shastra law book texts belong to this period reflect tendency towards lowering the age of marriage for girls and advocating a celibate and austere life for widows. The Sanskrit Kavya literature refers to the courtesans as Ganikas, who were admired for their beauty but could not attain social respectability. Reference to slave are found in Dharma Shastra texts as well as Narada Smriti, which mentions 15 types of slaves. These include mainly the prisoners of war reduced to slavery, dead bondsmen, and voluntary enslavement. Slaves are generally referred to as a domestic servant or personal attendant. Religion. So before we move ahead, like star mark this क्योंकि इसके ऊपर UPPCS में 1992 में सवाल आया था, and also slash mark this क्योंकि इसके ऊपर UPSC मेंस में 2018 में सवाल पूछा गया था. So it makes an important topic. So let's get started. Religion. The period from 300 to 600 CE is often considered as a phase of consolidation and Brahminical ideology, as temple-based sectarian cults became popular and Sanskrit was firmly established as the language of royal inscription. In the Gupta period, Samrata, religious practice based on the Smritis, became popular. Sectarian symbols such as Linga, Trishula bull, Gajalakshmi, Chakra, and Shankha, conch shell, appeared on the royal prashasti, coins, and seals. Hinduism acquired its present shape during Gupta's age only. The Gupta ruler gave patronage to Bhagavatism, which was centered around the worshipper of Bhagavata or Vishnu and his incarnation. Later, the Vishnu came to be identified with Krishna Vasudeva, a legendary hero of Vrishni tribe, who gave the historical sermon of Bhagavad Gita in the epic of Mahabharata. So Bhagavatism also identified with Vaishnavism. It put emphasis on bhakti, loving devotion, and ahimsa, not killing of animals, which is why it stressed more on vegetarianism. Rather than Vedic ritual and sacrifice, the new religion was quite liberal and assimilated the lower class in its fold. According to Bhagavad Gita, the chief text of Bhagavatism, whenever there was a social crisis, Vishnu would appear in a human form and save the people. Thus, the 10 incarnations of Vishnus were envisioned. The Puranas were written to popularize the virtue of each of these incarnations. Thus, by the end of the Gupta period, Mahayana Buddhism was overshadowed by Bhagavatism, and Vishnu became the member of the Trinity of gods along with Shiva and Brahma. Idol worship became a common feature, and the idols of different incarnations of Vishnu were housed in the temple constructed in the Gupta period. Themselves as Bhagavatas, worshipper of Lord Krishna, and Garuda was their emblem, which most of the Vakatakas claimed to be devotees of Shiva and adopted the boar as their emblem. However, both Guptas and Vakatakas claimed to be a devotee of Vishnu. There was also an emergence of worship of composite deities such as Harihara, who is a part of Vishnu and part Shiva. Religious syncretism, for instance, the incorporation of Buddha as one of the 10 Vishnu's avatar. The phase also saw the competitive relationship between the various cults, as expressed graphically in the representation of Devi trampling on other Hindu gods, or Buddhist deities trampling Hindus one, mostly Shiva. This period also saw a myriad of local cults, belief, and practices. The popular devotional worship includes worship of stone and terracotta images of various demigods and demigoddesses, such as Yaksha and Yakshini, Nagas, Gandharvas, and Apsaras, but with one major difference. Even though the independent worshippers of Yaksha and Naga continued, as evident by Yaksha temple at Padmavati, Madhya Pradesh, and Naga shrine at Cave 16, Ajanta. The colossal sculpture of the Yaksha and Nagas are found in earlier times disappeared, and now they appeared more often as subsidiary figures and more as Dwarapalas, gatekeepers of the great gods. This phenomenon clearly established the attempt of the dominant religious tradition to not only establish links with the popular cults but also pointed towards the effort to subordinate them. The Gupta kings were devotee Hindus, but they followed a policy of tolerance towards other religious sects. The Chinese pilgrim Fa Hin and Hyun Sang, who came to India during the reign of Chandragupta II and Harsha respectively, clearly gave the impression that Buddhism was also flourishing. Though it is also true that Buddhism no longer received royal patronage, and it is the glory in the days of Ashoka and Kanishka was nowhere to be found. However, some stupas and viharas were constructed, and Nalanda developed as a great center of education for Mahayana Buddhism. During his time, students from other countries also came to study in this university. According to Hyun Sang, the revenue of 100 villages supported it. There was also a spread of Tantrism in India in this period. As we have discussed earlier, from the 5th century, the Brahmanas had started receiving lands in the tribal areas of Nepal, Assam, Bengal, Orissa, Central India and Deccan. As consequence, both tribal and Brahminical culture influenced each other. The tribals were assimilated in the Brahminical fold as Shudras, and simultaneously, the tribal element came to be assimilated in the Brahminical society. The Brahmanas also adopted the rituals, gods, and goddesses. It is this assimilation of Brahminical religion and tribal practices which resulted in the development of Tantrism. Some general features of Tantrism include the importance attached to rituals, yogic practice, terrifying deities, sexual rites, and an emphasis on Shakti, energy, which was conceived to be feminine. The Tantric part was supposed to be a secret one, which was divulged by preceptors to select initiated others and only involved the attainments of supernatural powers and a state of liberation. Certain diagrams known as yantras, mandalas, or chakras and mudras, symbolic gestures, played an important role in tantric rituals. It did not believe in any caste or gender bias and admitted both women and Shudras in its rank. The tantric concept affected Shivism and Vaishnavism as well as Buddhism and Jainism. It resulted in the introduction of worship of female deities in these religions. So that's all for the day. In the next lecture, we'll start with the literature.